do let me know in the comments below. Audio, visual, you should see Adam wandering around. You should see me seated in my studio. We should be live streaming this on LinkedIn as well. If you are on LinkedIn and you can hear me okay, please do let me know in the comments. I'm going to quickly check my phone to see whether I'm live streaming okay there, because I've totally lost confidence in my ability to do this properly. And oh shit, I don't think I am live streaming. Yes, I am. Thank God. So yes, hello LinkedIn. I'm pleased that I haven't screwed that up. Okay, great. We seem to be okay on Crowdcast. We seem to be okay on LinkedIn as well. So good. Okay, quick. Thank you to our sponsors as always, folks. Brainfood Live has been consistently sponsored every week, and it will be to the end of this year and including into next as well. The community from the vendor side has been so important in helping us keep these conversations going. So thank you to our sponsors, particularly this week. It is Greenhouse, the #1 ranked ATS, according to Brainfooders in 2021 survey. I think they've got a good chance of being ranked the same in the 2023. If you are looking for an enterprise grade software and you're looking to upgrade from some of the legacy stuff that you've inherited or that procurement has decided is a good idea that you use, greenhouse.com has to be on your horizon. Go and check it out, get a demo. Also spend some time on their higher site, sort of their higher segment on their website, because they're producing a lot of content upfront for free for TA professionals in order to get better at the job. So thank you to Greenhouse, and go check them out. Okay, let's get on with it. We are with Adam Gordon, of course, who hopefully is now seated in a place with low ambient noise. Adam, nice to see you. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I suspect there's probably some disco music in the background or whatever, but like that'll just add to the experience for everybody, I would think.
There's also like sounds of children in the background, so presumably you're now in the kiddies pool.
No.
So that's suboptimal. But there we go. No worries. I think if you toggle on and off with Mike, you should be all right. Anyway, great to see you, Adam. I mean, I guess we just better get on with it. In terms of, I don't know whether you had the time to read the newsletter at all last week, but if you have, why don't we talk about a few things there?
Yeah, I have. So first thing is I was planning to read the article about the impact of the personality of the founder on the success of a startup, but I didn't, because I opened it up and the writing was far too small and just like far too much writing, and I can't really read, so I didn't do that. I moved straight onto video, which I like better, and I looked at Jay McIntosh's 2-minute video about the Halloween escape room like riddle. So this is quite interesting. You categorized it as recruitment marketing, I think.
Recruitment advertising. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so yeah, I guess it is. What it reminded me of was, I remember a smart company back in when I started in recruitment, probably late 90s, early 2000s. And they used to post adverts in the Glasgow Herald, and at the bottom of the advert, they would go, "We're only looking for smart people to work at our company. If you can work out how to get our attention, then that's how you apply for the job." There was no email addresses, no phone numbers, no send your CV. That was your task. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of a more modern version of that.
Yeah.
Getting people to complete some riddles, do a task, make use of ChatGPT, use some logical thinking, or But I also did wonder about who is this excluding from participating in it? Because I'm sure it's excluding some people, like people with brains that work in slightly different ways. Now the argument might be, well, yeah, we only want people who can solve the riddle and can use their initiative and this and that and the next thing. But I feel like that seems a little bit exclusive. And then the other thing is, I might be a little bit, not everybody's got access to all that stuff. So it's definitely exclusionary. However, I thought it was quite clever, and overall I liked it.
Yeah, so to give people a bit of an idea what that is, I've just shared the Loom video on the chat stream there. Do check it out. It's just 2 minutes, but I thought just quite a clever use of ChatGPT and deployed really as an advert, as a job ad for people who went through the puzzle. So in other words, I think the founder of the business basically set a puzzle within ChatGPT, invited people to go and interrogate that. And the people that passed the puzzle basically would then be, directed towards a place where they can, have either apply to a job or interact with someone who's actually managing that job. And I thought it was a recruitment advert. I would describe that as a recruitment advert with a bit of assessment on the front of it. I thought it was quite clever. You're right about the exclusion, though, but it leads to quite interesting philosophical question as to the nature of assessment or the nature of recruitment, which fundamentally is exclusionary unless you're going down the open hiring route and you're saying, anybody is welcome to do the job. But if you are kind of saying we want a particular type of person, we've got this in mind, then presumably you are trying to deter as many people or as you are trying to invite. So I think the way to solve that from a D&I perspective is to have that not as the only route in. So potentially you have other ways in which people can encounter a job opportunity. There probably is something people can apply for, or sort of outside of that little sort of avenue. And there may be other ways to do it, but it may just simply be an unsolvable problem, because when you think about access, not everyone's got a computer, for instance. Not everyone has the internet even. So at some point, all of the stuff we're doing in terms of advertising is excluding a component of the potential audience. So, is that a practical problem that we're going to solve, or a philosophical one? I just think in this case, the guy's not trying to solve the world's problems. He just thought of a clever idea to use AI and kind of advertise and assess at the same time, which I thought was quite a clever and efficient way of using it.
I think you've got to consider the nature of the job as well. It was an AI advocate job or something like that. It was like AI champion or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
No one's going to be able to do that job if they don't have access to the internet and they don't know how to use ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think there was some consideration as to how relevant the assessment criteria was to the to the job itself. I think the bottom line is that we can take an absolutist stance when it comes down to accessibility, but fundamentally that kind of chafes against assessment, and maybe even the idea of recruitment, which is to select people. If you're selecting one person, you're going to deselect another. Like I say, the only way out of that kind of conundrum is to have an open hiring policy and say, look, if you turn up, first person turns up for the job gets the job, which some companies do for certain roles, which I would also strongly advocate for. But anyway, if you want to get some inspiration on how to use AI as an advert, check out the Loom video I've just shared.
Companies definitely need to get more creative with how they're doing recruitment advertising. I mean, I was in my daughter, like it was my kids, like what do you call it, like parents' evening at school yesterday. Went into my daughter's class, and on the classroom, loads of like A4 posters that the kids, like 6-year-olds, have done. Rome needs you, and like a picture of a centurion, and like it's they're studying all about Rome. And again, we haven't evolved that much since then,
No, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem. You got to tell people there's a vacancy, and then I think the creativity comes in how you distribute it. And the distribution is where the creativity comes from. Even though at the end of the day, there's a number of things we could try that I'm looking forward to seeing. But yeah, I'm a little bit more generous, I would say, to the advertisers out there. But yeah, let me know, folks, if you've been creative in advertising. Let me know in the comments. Okay, give us another one.
Okay. Yeah, I liked your poll. What proportion of your TA team likely to be freelance next year? I found that really interesting. 19% said more than 50% of our TA team is going to be freelance next year. Now, there were 380 responses or something like that. Pretty good. But I wonder if that is like one TA manager for a company, and they're going to hire 2 freelancers, or they've got 2 freelancers who are doing like talent sourcing for them, or something like that. Obviously, that's more than 50%. So, there was what 18% was between 25 and 50%. The spread was quite even, and I think you pointed out in your commentary that maybe that means we don't really know what we're doing yet in TA, but as a minimum, it's a talking point.
Yeah, I actually think it was a bad poll now that I look at it. Because what I should have asked was, is your freelancer component of your TA team going to increase or decrease compared to last year? And that was probably give people a little bit of a better idea as to it's easier to answer rather than the calculating percentages of the forecast. So it's a question I can ask the crowd now. Like, if you're working in a TA department, do you anticipate the freelancers stroke non-permanent contribution from other recruiters to be higher in 2024 than 2023? Let me know in the comments. My guess was that probably yes. And the reason why is because I think we're massively understaffed in most TA departments right now. We're going to roll into 2023 understaffed, I would say. And when there is an acute need, I think there's a lot of floating labor out there that will drop in. And so the easiest thing to do would be to just drop someone in and then work with them from there and see whether they're gonna be great for this 2-month contract, which may then sort of extend to a permanent job or whatever. So I do believe that we're not going to just go charging and rebuilding internal TA departments and with FTEs. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think we're going to walk into 2024 under resourced and then tap the low hanging fruit. If people don't mind me describing this, but the people who are available right now, who are going to drop in, lots of talented people. And in fact, the 2:00 show today is about the state of the recruiter job market. We're going to be talking exactly about this point. The amount of people that are just so tremendously skilled and experienced that haven't actually found a home to date. And I think that population may still exist in some manner in 2024, and I do believe that they're going to convert into contracting, freelancing, indie type recruiting, which is what I did. When I first went in house, and I think it's going to be a bigger component of internal TA basically. Anyway, let me know in the comments whether you think my projections are correct or not. I'll be interested in people's vibes on that. Okay, cool. Give us one more, man, before we get into the meat of this.
Before I do that, I'd love to know, Andrea's just said there's going to be massive changes with RPOs in 2024. That's clear to all of us. I think the same, but I'd love to just like, Andrea, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I want to know if what you're saying here in the comments is like what I'm thinking.
Well,
I'm not saying you're the same age as my dad.
Better not be. No, but I tell you what, it's relevant
Right.
to our point when we're talking about career pathing for TA development, for the TA department, because do we factor in the existence or the likelihood that we will be working with RPOs significantly or not? I mean, that has some impact as to how we do our design of our internal processes. Yeah, cool. Give us another one, mate.
Right. So I enjoy almost everything from Visual Capitalist. I wasn't quite sure how they got this information, but they seem to have aggregated the results from 500,000 plus surveys. They call them value graphics. I don't know how they've done that, but anyway, what they've done is they've gone and basically mapped out. Here's what the values of people in the world are. Here's what they cherish, and the top 5 were family, relationships, financial security, belonging, and community. Now, there were variances across countries, absolutely. The next 5 were personal growth, loyalty, religion or spirituality, employment security, and personal responsibility. Now, what this has made me think is, we in employer branding, I think that what we probably do is we try and represent from the inside out a lot more than we go and establish what is it people in Halifax want, or what is it people in Berlin want, or what is it people in Zimbabwe want, and then look at, okay, number one, what is it we're already doing that is congruent with what people want, but also what are the gaps and what is it we should be doing? So if family is important, is the number one most important thing to the people we want to hire, what are we actually doing in our company to support that? And I just don't think we look out enough at what I say we in employer brand. I haven't worked in employer brand since 2004, so I'm a little bit out of date. But I don't hear about companies like looking to mirror what people are looking for a little bit more, and it's just more so about this is what we're all about. That's what made me think about.
No, you've just caused me to think about something there because. So by the way, this is a visual, a big one-pager, but I think it's really interesting how they display it. Anybody who's read The Culture Map by Erin Meyer would love this infographic. It's basically, I mean, the critique angle of this would be to say, look, this is all like cultural stereotyping, etc. We can accept that that's a valid critique, but at the same time, the information has been sourced from the people who live in those places and have just been surveyed to rank these values as to where they belong. Now, what's interesting is a lot of these values are consistent, but how does that apply to us in recruiting? Let's say, for instance, family is important. I think there's two tracks in which employers could respond to that. Number one, you could provide, let's say, more flexible working and then make sure that people are actually spending time with their families. That would be a big tick in the box. But another way in which people might interpret how to use this would be to say, oh, we need to cultivate a sense of family within our company, and then try and simulate a sort of family relationships within a company, because if that's what the people say they want, then we can give them a facsimile of family within the group. And I think a lot of companies have historically done that angle also. So there's two ways in which we could think about all of these values, which is values basically outside of work, what people kind of think are important. I think it's a very good culture building tool, very good for getting you thinking about your employer brand, but also, to understand how you communicate with your employees. If they say they care about X, then does it not make sense for you to think about providing some sort of investment in that area that they say they care about?
I've said this before on this show many times, that I believe that the most important aspect of HR is employer brand, and every other HR job and discipline should be aimed at enhancing the employer brand and making it better and better. And lots of people could argue in different ways. The only thing that challenges that, I guess, is law, sticking to the law and making sure that nobody's in jail. But other than that, I think employer brand's the absolute top of the tree. And I wonder how many employer branding teams have the ability to go into their organization and say, we need to change the way that call center is structured in terms of the layout of the actual environment people are working in. We need to change the structure of that team because that person reporting to that person doesn't make any sense in terms of our employer brand. That person needs fired because they're creating toxicity in our business. How much power do employer branding people have? Not very much, because they report into talent acquisition, which then reports into HR. This is why I think the head of the entire people function needs to have employer brand as the top thing, and that person needs to be able to go and make changes like that inside an organization. All power to employer branding.
Yeah, I think there's a decent argument there. I mean, in some respects, employer branding is going to be the function that helps you attract candidates, and theoretically, more candidates should mean solving lots of recruiting problems. I mean, how many recruiting problems fundamentally are about lack of candidates? So I think there's an argument to be said for that. All right, let's get on with it, because we've got the guests to bring on. Today's topic is about how to create a framework for your TA department. Now, this is actually inspired by a post I saw from Annie Jackson, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. She's been taken away. She texted me yesterday. She said she couldn't make it. But Annie, this show is basically based on one of your posts, which is to say, we've created this TA leveling system within her business at Clio, which is basically a published career path for people joining the company in the TA department. And it just struck to me, look, you know what, that's kind of unusual, because how many times have you seen a TA department that has explicitly got this, where, oh, I come in and I join as a recruiter level 1, and then my pathway is to go level 2, or maybe I go to recruitment marketing or recruitment analytics on this parallel level, and then from there maybe I go to data analytics or whatever it is. So how many of us have actually created a framework this way? How many of us want to do it? And how do you get started? I think for bigger departments, this typically exists. So there's a scaling issue as well. So how big a department merits this? And secondly, what kind of jobs that we need to create? How do you create a career pathing system that makes sense? That's not pandering. One of the things I wanted to explore, I guess, today is, oftentimes you see the creation of artificial tiers just to give a sense of career progress, but in fact, the job hasn't substantively changed. You've got a new label at the front of your job title, let's say, to give you a bit of an ego rub. Maybe you've got a bit more in compensation, but the job fundamentally is the same. And I'm thinking, okay, we kind of have to avoid that, because that just seems to me like just excess bureaucracy. So let's bring in our guest here and see what they've got to say on it. Adam, you want to say something, mate?
Yeah, one quick thing. I think that this is a subset of another thing that I brought up on Brainfood Live a few times, which is I think that talent acquisition needs to have a responsibility for advising. I mean, this is a talent intelligence thing, I think, for advising the CEO and the CFO and the CPO around, not C3PO though, around around what the size and shape of the company and the teams need to be this time 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, on the basis of what jobs are literally not going to need to get done by humans anymore, but what jobs are going to have to be created in order to achieve other goals.
All right.
TA.
Remind me of that exact point, because that's the perfect way to try and end the show, because we're going to kind of say, okay, how do you design a career pathing framework for TA that's actually future-proof for AI? Because you can say, like, how long is the time frame for it, for instance? Look, it's going to take you 5 years to get to the top. Okay, great. 5 years, the world looks completely different. How does TA make sense in that? Have you future-proofed it to take into account that maybe a lot of the functions that we'll be doing today are not going to be done by us, or at least not by us without the assistance of AI in the future? Okay, so let's bring on. But today is a unique experiment, guys, because we're going to bring on not one but two Andreas. And not only this, but they also have unhelpfully not put their profile pictures on here, so that there's two green labeled Andreas that are going to come on, and hopefully we'll know how to make sense. Okay, let's bring these. Are they? How come you can see them and I can't?
No, I'm saying bring them both on.
I'm doing that. So Andreas, you've been invited. Oh, there she is.
Hi.
Oh, Andrea, have I told you I really like your new hair?
Thank you, appreciate it. Nothing better than to start this with a compliment. Keep it going, Hang.
Yes, it suits you really well. Okay, so Andrea, what the heck is that? Is that me? Oh my God. Who's making that horrible noise?
It's not me.
Does everyone else hear this?
It's Andrea, DJ kit, probably.
I don't know, it's horrible. We've got to stop. Is it me?
Let me go out and try again. I hope it's not me.
Okay, someone's got to go. Adam, maybe you? Andrea, maybe you? I'm trying to remove you. Yeah, it's Andrea Marston.
That's because she's kitted out like Calvin Harris behind there. That's why.
Guys, really sorry. We've lost one listener. Someone's bailed out on us because of the horror of that. It's Andrea Marston. So Andrea, I know you can hear us. I've just booted you out, but whatever that noise is, try and like recorrect that, and we'll bring you back in. But whilst we're getting Andrea back on, why don't we say hello to Andrea Lungulescu? Andrea, why don't you introduce yourself real quick? Who are you? What it is you do?
Oof, let me take this off. Thank you. Yes, I'm Andrea. That's the way to differentiate between the two of us.
Andrea.
And I'm a principal talent partner. I'm based out in Berlin with Wayfair. I've been in TA for over 13 years plus. Primarily technology, but not only. And recently I have the badge of founder because I founded, together with my colleagues, the TA Crunch, which is the community for talent acquisition professionals in Berlin. Yes. Really passionate about the role that I have as a principal. So I'm a bit on a mission to share with the world the importance of the role. So I hope this is a good platform for that. Let's see.
No, absolutely. And the reason why you're here is because I wanted to explore this non-managerial career track for TA, because traditionally anybody who wanted to go up in careers just had to elevate it into management, and often unsuitably. And that for me is part of the problem of not doing career pathing properly, because you're running out of options. In order to retain someone, you just put them up into some sort of managerial tier, and actually they may not want that, and they may not be competent at doing it, and all the rest of it. Okay, we're going to bring on the other Andrea. Not to say there's ever such a thing as another Andrea. This is the unique and special Andrea.
Just to be clear, there's an Andrea and there's an Andrea.
Andrea.
Right? Two different names here.
Yes. So Andrea Marston, I've just invited you back in. Let's click on and let's hope we do not disturb the neighborhood dogs again with the very unique sound. Never heard of it before. But it was quite
Chloe Morrison said,
"Oh no, delay, Andrea. We have to do something. We have to do something. Let me mute Andrea because I think we've got to do that." Okay, so Andrea, you're muted. So that's okay. I'm sorry. You look marvelous, by the way. But the sound is no bueno. So I wonder whether it might be just a case of unplugging a few things, and if there's a mic that you're using, get rid of that, or if there's a whatnot. Yeah, maybe that will help. Yeah, let me know when you fixed it, and I'll get you back off the mute thing. Okay, let's talk to you, Andrea Lungalescu first. Career pathing framework. Have you got any experience of this, either designing it or being part of an organization that's gone through the design of such a framework? Yes, no. If no, that's fine. But how would you do it if from the context that you've interacted with?
Yes, but funny enough, not for talent acquisition. I think during my time at Zalando, there was repathing, but it was for product management. So it's I think it would be quite similar. However, I would not want to use that example. I would just like to focus on talent acquisition. And while I have not been part of the design of it, definitely when I reached the proverbial glass ceiling with Zalando, basically they had nothing more to do with me on an IC track. And I was adamant about not going on the management track. The only option that they found at the time was to ship me to executive. And that was not really something that I was extremely passionate about. But I thought, yeah, that could be an option. It was the only other option to allow me to grow vertically without pushing me into management. So what we observed then was that our leader at the time considered, let's say, deploying a completely new type of role, which was called like a SWAT type of position. It never came to fruition. We pretended we had it for a little while, but it never came to fruition. So sadly, it still went round and round in circles. So I observed it then that still the growth went from, okay, you're a senior recruiter. The next step is for you to go into executive. So that was one experience I had where it didn't really lead too much. Shifting away from that to Wayfair, which is an American organization. In the US, the idea of a principal is much more embedded than I observe it being in Europe. And it already existed, right? So the role already existed. You were not capped anymore to sit at the senior recruiter and then what? You had the option, you can go into a principal opportunity. And even here, interesting enough, I've been partially involved in designing the senior principal, because even there, you might reach a point in time where you're, okay, what do we do with this very senior IC person? What can we give them higher up? And the inspiration for this comes from tech, from primarily engineering, because in engineering, you have a principal engineer, you will have a senior principal, and you will have executive principals. So the argument was, how can we look at these two tracks and what can we learn from engineering that we can transfer over to talent acquisition? These are the experiences I've been exposed to, let's say, head on. And I'm still yet to see a company developing these tracks beyond, even if they have a principal, but maybe beyond that. What do you do after that? Because you have manager, senior manager, head, etc. But what do you do with your ICs?
I feel like we need to be learning and applying as much as possible from engineering. And so there's things like recruiter operations and recruiter enablement, things like that are all things that are absolutely, way ahead in teams like engineering. And I'm not sure there's a limit to how we should be structuring our talent acquisition teams with inspiration from engineering.
Well, hang on this. So, what are the differences in this case? So there's people watching this saying, "All right, that's all well and good," but what is a principal engineer compared to a senior engineer? What is the difference between a principal recruiter and a senior recruiter? Are they just labels to help placate, individuals that are upset because they haven't had career progression? Everyone's shaking their heads, but all right, explain it to me then. Andrea Marston, I'm going to bring you in. And okay, I think you're going to be okay. Let's just do that. Oh no, Andrea, we can't do it. I don't know what to do here. It might be a case of you logging back in, maybe on a different
different room.
Yeah. So Andrea Lungalescu, let's go with you on this. How would you define the difference? Like when you first encountered this difference between an engineer, a principal engineer, a principal could be engineer, and a senior, how was that explained to you as a distinguishing thing?
If the question is for engineering and not talent acquisition, I will go back to my experience at Zalando, where I worked with seniors, principals, senior principals, and executive principals. So you literally see all the ranks and the difference. Probably the most impressive thing I've observed is the level of influence they have, or where their influence kind of takes place. We are talking about C-level influence, C-level involvement for the executive principals, and then as you go down, you come closer to the team level. So if we just talk about engineering, probably the simplest description I could give you is a senior engineer is somebody who is still part of a team, and their influence, meaning mentoring, meaning the things that they develop, the things that they put through, they deploy, the things that they do, the community they operate in, is team level and maybe department level. Then a principal, for sure, it will be department level. And we are talking about influencing 50 plus to 100 plus people, right? Meaning that they will get their hands involved in what every other team does, and they will build a cohesive, maybe an overarching kind of, let's say you use the term architecture or framework for all the teams to be able to utilize. And then as you go higher up, I won't go maybe necessarily too much more in detail. And this is easily transferable to principal recruiters. This is my role. I'm more than happy to brag about it. But it is that kind of level of influence. Where do you influence? How much do you touch in your day-to-day job, right? How wide is your scope on a horizontal level? And then how high do you go on a vertical level with your connection? Where do you operate? Do you operate C-level, just under C-level? Where do you sit in that space?
All right. So what we can say with this career track of individual, so non-manager, no managerial responsibility, but the label basically applies to where you interact with the department. So if you can imagine a department as one column, and then you have the principal and executive principal, senior principal, those kinds of things on a different column that's next to it, and it applies, the relationship maps horizontally across those pieces. And to give some understanding, I think all the tech recruiters here probably would understand a little bit about this, in the sense that, if you have someone who is designing a framework that they want their engineers to work on, or best practices in terms of how to deploy software, that person probably it doesn't have to be nested within the team producing the software. They may be someone who is outside of the team and then producing the best practices and being the person that kind of tunes everybody to become more efficient. So I can absolutely imagine that. It's almost like having a formalization of someone who's as a mentor, whereby the role is just always to provide these tools and frameworks for other operators to actually do the delivery. So does this mean that if you're doing this type of work that you're finished with recruiting? Like, do you not actually speak to candidates? And which is fine, because I would imagine maybe you would one day actually not do this, or do you still get involved somehow? And if so, how do those two things, interact? How are those two things in tension somewhat?
Mm-hmm. I'll respond this from a recruitment standpoint, not a principal engineer standpoint. And you are correct, right, in relation to building this framework. However, I wanted to add something to what you just said. Bringing somebody from the outside to build something that was maybe previously designed in this space over here, that is possible for sure. However, imagine that the principal or maybe even a senior one would have their hands in these things so that they understand what they're building for. And to go back to your question in relation to being still hands-on, yes, as a principal, you still are, or at least in my case, I'm still very much hands-on. I would split my role into 30, 30, 30, if you want percentage-wise. So recruitment, operational, everything you can imagine that entails recruitment, from sourcing to managing candidates through the pipeline, all of that. Then you have process development, process deployment, innovation. This is another 30. And then another 30, you have project management, but large-scale projects that once they get delivered, they impact tens, hundreds of people. They impact the entire talent acquisition department. So not just the one, let's say you have a tech TA team. No, it goes beyond that. It goes global, or it goes wider than that. And a lot of upskilling. So as a principal, you always act as a multiplier. So that's why I said you have your hands in different pies so that you understand, how am I going to build a tray to carry all these pies? If I don't understand the shape and how they look like and how they wobble, I can't build a tray to carry them around. So you need to have your hands in multiple things to be able to support the various functions.
I also like the idea that it's the project management role also, because there's how many projects are out there that are given to someone to do, but if you're operationally maxed out, it's extremely difficult to implement something, or to test out a tool, or to do whatever it might be, because you're busy with business as usual. So maybe a lot of the business not as usual projects could kind of go to this group as well. Okay, let's bring on Andrea Marston. I think this is going to be okay. I've got like strong confidence. Send me good vibes, everybody. Let's go. Fingers crossed. I want to talk also about the scale of this, because obviously it's not suitable. The principal concept is not suitable for a certain a size of TA team, but also maybe career pathing may not be suitable either. We've literally taken Andrea to a different part of the world in order to get her on. But I think we're okay, Andrea. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I'm now in a room where there is literally no technology.
Amazing. I don't know what that was, but it was like, it must have been something that was really interfering with with, I don't know, it seemed like an alarming thing that caused, people to take action, like leave the room or something, So anyway, wonderful to see you, Andrea. Let's do some intros to you. Who are you? What it is you do?
Well, I clearly torture people, including dogs, on a regular basis in my special room. But other than that, I'm a global TA leader at VMware. VMware being a software company. We're about 38,000 people globally. I'm based in London. That's the lovely London weather you can see behind me, and I've been working in TA now for about 20 odd years, and worked for a number of different tech companies in TA. So I've seen some quite different sized functions and different ways of doing TA. I don't think one size fits all. So career pathing is a really interesting thing for me because I've looked at different ways of trying to make this work. And, I've been in TA for a long time, so clearly there is a career path. So
Okay, let's talk
subject.
about the different ways in which this can work. What do you mean by that? I mean, what styles of career pathing have you encountered in your career so far, Andrea?
Yeah, well, we've actually been through this massive transformation in VMware. So, large TA team, and working out how do we career path this, because other organizations where we've not had a sourcing team, or we've had limited number of coordinators and that sort of thing. So I've seen it work differently. When we tried to redesign it in VMware a couple of years ago, without actually, taking the wheels off the bus and keep going as well, we took everything back to scratch and said, right, if we were redesigning this from scratch, what does a recruiter look like, a sourcer, a coordinator, all the other pieces? How do we actually make all this work so it fits the business, but also critically, how do we design it so that everyone is more empowered and enjoying their role, and they're not doing work that makes them upset or just bored or something they can't really do and play to their strengths. So it's about putting the right work with the right people. I don't think it's immediately perfect, but I do think we got things into a much better place than they were. And I think it's an ongoing exercise. As we see more and more of AI coming in, we know that there's going to be the roles are going to be becoming more and more human and less computational.
Yeah, very interesting. Tell me about the size and scale prior to this implementation, Andrea. How many people are we talking about when you came to the realization that actually we haven't got the right shape or size of department to deal with this company? Yeah, give us the landscape before you made the change.
Yeah, so we had about 400 people in TA, and we were struggling. We had the rec loads were too high. There were a number of things that just weren't working, and the answer wasn't just to bring in more TA people. It was, okay, how can we better utilize this so our coordinators are more effective doing the work that they do, and they're more empowered, and they're also learning some of the skills they're going to need to become recruiters or sources of the future. Also, how do we make our recruiters a little bit better at they were really strong at stakeholder management, but they were spending a lot of time doing relatively junior work that our coordinators were perfectly capable of dealing with. So, for example, things like, okay, the job code is wrong in our ATS. So a recruiter was having to do that, taking away time from actually doing working with their stakeholders to doing what is effectively an admin task that our coordinators should be able to do, but hadn't been taught on the system.
Yep. Okay, so a huge rationalization of the activities. Everyone's job's going to change. It's going to shuffle through. How do you get to that point where you start to talk to the department to get the information? I mean, is this a survey? Is this like a town hall? How does it all work?
Yeah, we started with a survey. Basically, what do you love about your job? What would you take out of your job? And we got some very consistent feedback across different things. And then we had a team that was sitting and looking at each role and working out, well, what does this look like, and how do we structure it? And if we can think about career paths, what would they look like? How do we bring in someone that's got very little sourcing skill into a junior sourcing role, and really focusing on sourcing from our CRM as opposed to sourcing externally, learning their sourcing skills, learning more about how to attract candidates, and then and how would that grow into an external sourcing role, for example. So it was all about each team working out, what does this actually look like? If you could redesign this from scratch, what does it look like for VMware today that's also going to be looking good in 2 years' time? And then not sitting back and saying, right, we've done it now. It's always been, keep going at it, keep looking at, well, what is this working? Where are the swim lanes? Did what we think was going to work not actually playing out in purpose? How do we keep changing that and continuously improve? So I think that mindset of being in continuous improvement, rather than like, it's now done and we can leave it alone for 3 years, is a really dated model that we all need to get rid of.
Hong, I
Alina,
want to interject on something because that's something so valuable Andrea just mentioned, and I think we did something, but the level just after that, I think this might add value to some individuals who might have career paths already designed in the organization. So it is this continuation. One thing that we've done, quite a recent exercise, when I was explaining, we were trying to develop this senior principal kind of role. We actually did focus groups with one, the senior recruiters, and two, the principals, to understand direct examples of their day-to-day work. Because it's one thing that you have in your career description internally, and actually it may differ from what people actually do. So we gathered so much data, and then based on that, we went and we calibrated again. So these calibration exercises that Andrea just mentioned are absolutely essential because our jobs evolve and they are dynamic. So what you've done 6 months ago, especially today, what you've done 6 months ago will probably not fit. So we need to constantly keep at it and adjust.
You got exactly that feedback loop back into the thinking and the redesign, and you keep doing it until you get a kind of an understanding that maybe you have got it right with regards to what people aligning the sentiment of the workers with the skills of the workers. That's what we're looking for, folks. Isn't that a fascinating thing to try and experiment with? Let's imagine, I don't know what size and scale makes sense for you to try this, but let's say there is 100 people or 500 people in department. If you could survey them all and say, what are your things you enjoy most? What are the things you're best at? What are the things you hate most? And what are the things you're not very good at? And you just like listed them all. And then from there, you could probably start to see a pattern as to who is actually particularly interested or good at this particular function, and how you might redeploy skills or how you even redesign the job so that you kind of reduce the amounts of work that people are not good at, don't want to do, and move them to work that people are good at and do want to do. And let's not forget, folks, that this is not an objective thing. There's people out there that hate the idea of sourcing. Sourcing might be just the worst thing in the world. They don't want to get involved with it. Other people, that's what they want to do. They have no interest in other aspects of the job. So, but unfortunately, recruitment can sometimes be overly broad, and we end up just having to do everything kind of poorly. And then, as you say, Andrea, solution is just to hire more recruiters in when you're busier, and is everyone doing everything? Probably at some point that's untenable. Let's talk about size though. At what point does it make sense to formalize this? Andrea L., what are your thoughts on this? I mean, is there a department that's too small to think about designing a formal framework? Where would you say it's actually necessary to do?
Well, you hit the nerve on that one with me. I actually did interviews with leaders in TA. I think we spoke about it a while ago, trying to figure this thing out, because I would argue you should have a principal, but that's extremely selfish of me. The findings from these interviews I've done are as follows. Smaller organization, and think up to maybe 500, even to 1,000 people, dependent if their talent acquisition department is evolved enough. Imagine you have maybe 10, 15 people in your TA department. If that is, for example, ingested in your overall HR department, it probably doesn't make sense for you to have someone on a principal level. However, one thing that stood out for me was some people would say, if talent acquisition is ingested in HR and we have people leaders in HR, can they take care of the people aspect of talent acquisition? And you don't need a head of TA, but you can have a principal in TA, and they take care of all the strategic topics, deployment of tooling, implementations, you name it. They just don't do the people topic. So this was a nice thing that came out from these conversations I had. Again, does it often make sense? Potentially not. So if we're going, but I'm really curious of Andrea's point of view on this one. If you're going maybe 15 to 20 people in TA, split between tech and non-tech, probably not, if you need people to be functionally and operationally managed. If you find this leadership elsewhere in your HR department, then I would say bring someone who can put operations in place and excellence in place, and have the leadership handled by somebody else. So I think it's quite a gray area. I know I gave you a very wobbly answer.
Yeah, I'm looking for numbers here, like how big? That's all right, Andrew. Maybe 20,
let
maybe
me
20. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Folks, you let me know in the audience here. In your experience, at what point does it make sense to have a formalized kind of career structure, career hierarchy, whereby there's clear definitions and there's a pathway in which you can navigate? I've only ever worked in like more or less one-man band, so I don't even know. But you do let me know. What we're looking at here, Adam, you've just redirected the camera. Is there an attractive person that we need to observe in the gym? Don't know. All right.
No, is it like Comic Relief Day or something? Because there's people getting cream pies in their face right
Really?
there,
Okay. Why don't
right
you
there.
point?
Yeah.
Let's point the camera there. Put mute off and let's have a look. See. Oh, it's someone's birthday. Or maybe this is some sort of maybe this is some sort of satanic ritual. We don't know. Okay. Let's get back to actually no. We have to do one thing before we go, folks. We always do this in the middle of every show. We cannot ever forget to do it. We are having to come off air in about 10 minutes or so. So this conversation has barely got started, and we're obviously going to have to redo a part 2 on it. But if you are interested in this topic and you want to interact with people that care about how to create frameworks for the TA department, now is a good time to go and connect with everyone else who is partaking in this conversation. So take a moment, grab your LinkedIn URL and share into the chat stream on Crowdcast. And then make sure you connect with everyone else who's done the same. I will say if you're watching this on LinkedIn, and I think lots of people seem to be watching on Andrea's LinkedIn, certainly on mine as well, do the same. Grab your LinkedIn URL, stick it in the comments, and then just connect with people that are doing it. Remember, LinkedIn kind of don't want you to expand your network because they want you to basically upgrade. However, this is one way where we can get around that. So make sure you take use of it, make use of sort of this feature. The people who are on this show are going to be happy to connect with you. There won't be any spam responses or block responses from the people you see here. So go ahead and connect away. All right, cool. Andrea M, sizing. Like, at what point does it make sense in your analysis? Let's say you're now a consultant, right? On career pathing. And companies, as founders come to you, yeah, let's design this. At what point does it make sense in terms of size of TA department?
I think you're probably going to hate my answer, but I would argue, even if you are one person in a TA, in a startup, you're the only TA person, you should always be looking at how can I elevate my role and what can I be doing now that's going to mean that I will have to bring in someone that's going to be more junior than me. And if everyone had that mindset and was trying to elevate their role to the next level, becoming a little bit more strategic, making it broader, thinking about it in a more HR style rather than a recruitment agency style, I think we'll have TA a lot further forward than we are currently. So actually one person is where I would start it. But if you're thinking about bringing someone in, it's like, well, what could they do that actually I don't like doing? How could I bring in someone that's really never worked in TA before, teach them some basics, and how am I going to help grow them? So whatever size department you are, you should be looking at how do you grow those people below you, even if you're not their direct manager.
Yeah, very good. And also, by the way, if we're able to create a structure, we'll end up kind of opening up the opportunities to different types of people to enter the industry. Because if we stayed, if you like, the classic monolithic agency style, which is basically full service recruiter, loads of full service recruiters, then someone who might be a team lead, and then a manager of a bunch of people, and then a departmental head, but everyone is fundamentally still doing the same thing. Classic structure. I think most people are probably in that. Then the individuals you're recruiting into that also need to do this very wide variety of topics, and it may not be that easy to do. So if you're able to break out specialisms that you think are suitable at an early stage, you can get different types of people in, different types of mental profiles, different types of behaviors, which ultimately would lead to a kind of a more flexible function that you could deploy in different ways and different needs. Okay, guys, we're running out of time real quick. So let's talk about the AI proofing of this future TA department. One of the things that we need to do, like it seems to me, let's create this like structure, and it'll take time for someone to progress through this structure, right? Just imagine if you're a junior person go through. What if the world changes so dramatically that the structure doesn't even make sense anymore in this AI-enabled future of ours, which may actually start knocking out various functions that previously we thought were core in the TA department, or elevating other functions that perhaps we don't even think about right now. How can we, have we thought about sort of where technology is already and the direction of travel and how that influences the future shape of the recruiter job? Any thoughts on this? Adam, I want to go with you actually, because you started this idea. So do you have any thoughts to share on this? AI proofing the TA function?
Yeah, I'm going to do it very briefly because there's absolute hilarity to my left. But I think that it's really important just to look at ask the team, what are the jobs that you're doing that are repetitive? What are the jobs that you're doing that actually, OpenAI or something else could be doing for you? What is it you're using that's helping you to do their jobs? Give them as much access as possible to tools and things to help them. I'm not saying like get them to kind of hang themselves. I'm saying establish what are all the things that just we don't need to be doing anymore. As it's just a very simple example, and this is going back to something Andrea said earlier, which is that Andrea found an advert, or she's got an advert that she put in the newspaper. When we put those adverts in the newspaper, I will shut up in a minute. When we put those adverts in the newspaper, we used to have to write on an A4 piece of paper and fax it to the newspaper, who would then type it out, and hopefully they got your phone number right. We don't need to do that, of course, anymore. There's different things that we can do. So I think we just need to constantly evaluate what is it that we should be doing. And I think the job of a recruiter becomes progressively more a tech manager and a data analyst.
All right, stop. We have to see what's going on. Turn the camera around and then mute yourself. Okay, let me just expand this. What's going on?
It's children in need. It's children in need.
Is it children in need? I just want to see some people with a pie in their faces. Is that them?
Wow. Yeah.
That's them. These people have not consented to be on Brainfood Live, by the way, but never mind. Okay. Let's how do we unfocus the tile? Okay, great. I'll tell you what, folks, if you're interested in this, I've actually done a little bit of research on like TA skills in terms of their level of exposure to AI or whatnot. This is not my work. Literally, I've asked AI to do this and they produced a list. So it's on my website. I'll share it to the group in a minute. But basically 100 essential recruiter skills. And then I've basically asked ChatGPT to force rank them 1 to 100 in terms of what is most exposed and least exposed, to give you a bit of an idea as to how AI feels, how confident AI is that they're able to disable, sort of disintermediate some of these functions. So take a look at it. Maybe that will give you a little bit of a substrate to think about future-proofing the department, because this career pathing structure that we currently have is inhabited by human beings, but we presumably need to think in future there may be AI kind of nodes on this, because it may well be that that's the most suitable thing to perform that particular task. Classic example would be things like used to be ad distribution. Someone used to have to post jobs in every job board and manage all of that stuff. Of course, multi-posting resolved that and it's gone as a function. Similar things will happen in what we're doing here. So have a think about it, use the resource. Okay, going to Andrea Marston on this. What are your thoughts? How do we AI enable or how do we design a career pathing framework that's future-proofed on the AI-enabled world?
Yeah, so it's, as you're saying, it's taking away all the repetitive tasks and it's focusing on the nuanced and the human elements. So a good example is, we get all this great data from wherever, from, LinkedIn or whatever type of tools we're using. And it is the ability to be able to take that data and drive a conversation and drive the behavior change that you need based on the data, rather than just saying, hi, we can show you there's 60 engineers in X market and they've got these kind of skills. That's not useful information. And if people can start to interpret the data, it's the human element. What does this actually mean? And what is your advice, as opposed to what ChatGPT or any AI can actually come up with? And if there's time, I will show you a print advert.
There's always time for a print advert. A lot of people out here, young pups, will have no idea what a print advert even is. So
Do you know,
please do go on then. Let's have a
look at
look.
this. Okay, so I've just had these next to me, right? So you can see this is an advert. You might recognize the brand for a technical brand manager. I don't know if that's going in. Is that going in back to front? It probably is,
No,
isn't
no, no.
it?
We can read it. We can read it.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So that was
amazing.
one of them. Okay. Just to give you an idea, these are display adverts, and then here you go. Here's another one. And
Wowzers.
the idea is, it was basically making you had to read it to understand what it was about. And I love this sort of stuff now. We don't do
No
anything like
worries.
that.
No
I
worries.
have
Adam,
all these
Adam is about to get
copies.
like a cream pie in his face, which unfortunately he's not prepared to humiliate himself on camera to see, but he's gone. Okay, great. Listen, we have to come to the end of the show, so thank you very much, everybody. Wonderful to have this conversation. I'm so sorry for the noise disturbances and what have you. Thank you so much for everyone for persevering all the way through. It's been a great conversation, but I think there's so much more to talk about here because there's a couple of reasons why this is significant. Firstly, we haven't even talked about sort of why it's important from an employer branding point of view. For if you're hiring for TA people, you're hiring for people of this type, how you've got internal sort of a structure of your frame of your career pathing has got to be a significant component to how attractive the job is. And I do want to continue to explore a bit more this AI side, because I think using the idea of a career framework might help us sort of focus our attention on what parts of the job we should be pushing ourselves toward, and maybe other parts of the job we should aggressively applying technology to, because we can see sort of where the lay of the land is. And career pathing, I think, can help us with that, because if we're just trying to do everything in one go, as most recruiters are, we're going to be lost in the weeds for all of the effort that we have. So anyway, listen, thank you to Andrea Marston for your perseverance and moving around the house to come and join us. Thank you to Andrea. This is calling on following Adam's instruction. Andrea Lungalessi for joining us and sharing us your wisdom on the principal pathway for a recruiter. Let me leave you go, guys. Great to see you. We'll see you. By the way, we're back in about an hour's time. So if you're interested in joining the show, which is kind of a follow-up on this state of the recruiter job market, what does all that look like? We won't say stay on the channel, but come back after lunch. We'll be back at 2 p.m. UK time. We'll see you shortly, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow, well, what a crazy business Brainfood Live is. So yes, thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back at 2 p.m. So 1 hour break. Have some lunch and follow the channel if you want to get notified when we're next back up.